The campaign announced today it has raised $540 million in 5 weeks since the vice president launched her campaign. 200,000 volunteer shifts were filled up last week, nearly half of them on the heels of the vice president's acceptance speech. The Trump camp is calling the enthusiasm a sugar high that will crash as memory of the convention fades. What's your take on this?
I think that voters have been tired of Donald Trump's dystopian views and just how negative he is about this country. As President Biden said, you can't love this country only when you win, and that's exactly who Donald Trump is. He only is in this election for himself. He only wants to implement an extreme Project 2025 agenda to hurt people. But look, the energy and enthusiasm that we're seeing, a lot of these donors are first-time donors. These are people who are just now getting engaged in politics. It's because they're resonating with the message from the vice president, and that is a message of creating an opportunity in this country for everybody not to just get by, but to be able to get ahead. There are two distinct visions in this country for the future. One under Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, where we're expanding people's freedoms, not ripping them away, and giving everybody an opportunity to succeed. And another on Donald Trump's side, where he will have more power as commander-in-chief and use that power to hurt people by implementing his extreme and unstable Project 2025 agenda.
Having said that, do you feel that the campaign will be able to maintain this high volume of donors and small donors, that it will continue to be able to do that at this level going into the last 70-plus days?
Absolutely, and I think it's because we're going to continue to put in the work as we have been for the past 16 months to build an infrastructure where we have 1,600 staff across the ground, 300 plus coordinated offices, making sure that we're able to capture this energy, give people in the states that matter most in this election a place to go, to volunteer, to be involved. I encourage everybody to go to KamalaHarris.com to figure out a way that they can be involved in this campaign, but we are going to continue to scale and make sure that we're meeting voters where we are by being innovative and running a modern-day campaign that is spreading the message about what's at stake in this election.
Now, let's turn now to immigration. The Trump campaign has been promising mass deportations if elected. Today, Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, struggled to answer whether a second Trump White House would mean a return to Trump's policies of separating migrant families at the southern border. Take a listen.
Will families be separated under your mass deportation policy?
I think that families are currently being separated, and you're certainly going to have to deport some people in this country. Now, I think you start with
yes?
what Kamala Harris says is that Donald Trump wants to separate families. Kamala Harris's policies have led to thousands upon thousands of migrant children living with sex traffickers and drug cartels.
Well,
that is the consequence of her policies.
But there's not a policy to separate families. There's not a policy to separate families.
The question is, if you know that your policies will lead to family separation, you don't get to claim. Kristen, this is important. Kamala Harris cannot claim that she doesn't know that her policies are leading to family separation. They are, and everybody knows it, and she has to take responsibility.
Your candidate has called for the passage of the bipartisan immigration bill that Trump had his allies in Congress kill. We had former Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner with us yesterday on the show, and he lauded Vice President Harris for taking responsibility for the border issue. Have Democrats become the party of action on immigration?
Absolutely, and I think we see J.D. Vance ducking and dodging because he knows that Donald Trump's policy on immigration would go as far as using the military to separate children from their mothers, round up migrants and put them in detention camps. There is a way to solve the crisis at the border without being inhumane about it. And Republicans failed to see that, which is why Donald Trump instructed Republicans in Congress to blow up the strongest, most bipartisan border bill that this country has seen. Vice President Harris would have supported that bill. And there's a way that we can do this. Democrats know that. Some Republicans in Congress even know that. And that's why they sided with President Harris or Vice President Harris and President Biden to try to get a deal done before Donald Trump blew it up. But this shouldn't be that hard. Family separation should be out of the question. And we're going to continue to work to make sure that we solve this crisis. Vice President Harris is going to continue to work to make sure she solves this, and at the same time, do it where folks can earn a pathway to citizenship. We can solve this problem without being inhumane about it, and J.D. Vance is ducking and dodging because he knows just how inhumane Donald Trump's approach has been and will be to solve the immigration problem at the border.
In fact, as a point of information, that one of the leaders of that bipartisan immigration bill was a very conservative Republican member of the Senate until Trump called Republicans and said, don't go with the commitment they had made to pass this bill. Let me go to this. The vice president and the governor are back on the trail later this week for a campaign bus tour through southern Georgia, where polls now show a narrowed race, whereas President Biden was trailing just over a month ago. But still, while the latest New York Times polling shows Harris leading in nearly every battleground state, Georgia is one of two where she's currently behind Trump at 46% to his 50%. How does the campaign turn the corner in the Peach State? Is it about mobilizing base voters or reaching out to undecided voters in the suburbs and rural areas?
It's all of the above, Reverend, and we're running like we're behind and we're the underdogs because we are. We're going to continue to put in work. But when it comes to Georgia, as you know, this is one of my favorite states to do politics in, and we have to get us out of Atlanta. We do have to turn out and mobilize base voters, no doubt about it. But we also have to speak to voters in rural Georgia, in the suburbs, in places like Savannah, in Augusta, in Columbus, in Macon County. And to do that, we will shave down on the margins, if not outright win some of these counties. And that is how you flip this state and win statewide. And so we're going to continue to do that. And these voters, we also see Republican voters that are resonating with our message. You saw throughout the convention, we had a number of prominent Republicans featured. And it's because even Republican voters know exactly how extreme and dangerous a second Donald Trump term would be, which is why they are endorsing Vice President Harris, speaking at the Democratic National Convention about the dangers of Donald Trump, including Republicans who have worked for him. And so we're going to continue to do all of the above, and at the same time making sure we're building an apparatus specifically in Georgia, because we know how Republicans play game there, to make sure that people are going to be able to express their fundamental right to vote. And I'm very proud of the voter protection efforts that our campaign has that will be used in that state to make sure that the election goes off smoothly when it's time.
While there's time, Mr. Fox, I have to go to this. As the Trump campaign is celebrating its endorsement from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who suspended his own presidential campaign last week, Senator Vance on today's Meet the Press would not renounce Kennedy's past comments suggesting vaccines cause autism and questioning the official narrative of what happened on 9/11. What's your take on Kennedy's endorsement of Trump?
It changes nothing in this race. RFK has been negligible since the moment the vice president got into this race. And in fact, if voters want to continue to see dangerous conspiracy theories that are designed to hurt people, look no further than Donald Trump. They're cut from the same cloth. And so our campaign is very clear about who we need to continue to speak to, where we need to go to speak to them, and what our message is for voters. And that's that at the end of the day, this election is a fundamental choice between two different visions in this country, one of an opportunity looking forward agenda where everybody has a chance to get ahead, not just get by, but to get ahead, where we're going to expand freedom and rights, and the other, dangerous conspiracy theory, a dangerous and divisive plan called Project 2025, where Donald Trump is the supreme leader and has power that he will use to hurt people and continue to rip away fundamental freedoms like the right to choose and come after things like IVF and reproductive tools that women in this country have. And so we know what we're fighting for, and we're going to continue to communicate with voters where they are exactly that message, and we're confident that we're going to be successful in November.